Hi, everyone, and welcome back to your summit. Your wait is over. Postmenopausal women scaling back. And I'm your host, Jean Nitre, weight loss expert. And I've gathered together several other experts who are very skilled at helping us with recent research and information and practices that we can adopt to help ourselves lose that excess weight around menopausal time. And today I'm here with Dr. Dan Pompa. He is a chiropractor and more notedly a toxin expert. Hi, Dr. Dan. Thanks for being here. And
thank you for having me.
You know, the toxins that we're going to talk about are so important as a major factor in weight loss. Because if you've got toxins causing havoc in your body, you're not going to lose weight. So we're going to get to the bottom of some of this and some empowering things that you can do for yourself as well. And so why don't you tell us, let's see, you're a chiropractor. We talked about that. I understand that you have a pain to purpose story. Let us hear about that, please.
Yeah, I mean, I no longer practice chiropractic. I teach what I learned in my pain and now my purpose. I've been privileged to teach thousands of doctors, around the country what I do about my cellular detox and cellular healing, which, really it came out of my own story. And, the reason why most people struggle to lose weight today, despite eating perfect and exercising, it is about toxins' effect on hormones. So, this is a really important subject for your group. I never thought I would be an expert in weight loss resistance, but it came out of my story. So I'll tell a little bit of that. And it was a while ago that I was practicing and, I had a very busy practice. I had 2 young boys at the time, happily married, everything going very well. And then all of a sudden fatigue started. And I was training on my bike at that time for some races, and I was probably in the best shape of my life, honestly. And all of a sudden, the fatigue, I cut back on my training, think I just overtrained, but it didn't work. I got worse. It went from fatigue to anxiety to insomnia, panic attacks, debilitating, anxiety. And then I became allergic to every food, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. Then I became basically intolerant to chemicals. So I became chemically sensitive. So my world just started shrinking, honestly. I couldn't even, my adrenals were absolutely shot. I couldn't handle even mild stress, even loud noises. My wife would literally have to take the kids and go out of the house. And I also became skinny fat. I mean, I did. My thyroid was shot. My hair was thinning. I mean, just like so many symptoms, massive brain fog. I got skinny fat, so I was losing muscle and gaining fat where I never had it before, so it wasn't a pretty picture. But I would address my adrenals and my thyroid because I knew that wasn't, there was something not right. But some things would get better, but most things would get actually worse, like my insomnia. So I knew it was too far downstream, and I knew that it had to be something with the pituitary hypothalamus because that's what controls that. And I just didn't know what was wrong until years later. So fast forward, I started searching and I found Mad Hatter's disease. I don't know if you remember what that is, but okay. So Mad Hatter's disease, they were making felt hats using mercury. Well, mercury was a part of the process, and that they became known as Mad Hatters. That was me. So I went and got a blood test like most people would do, and it was negative. It was a year or so later. I made friends with a very bright endocrinologist, read his books, and he said, Dan, I think you have mercury poisoning. I said, I thought so too, but it didn't work out. He said, what test did you do? I said, a blood test. He said, that's the wrong test. Do a challenge test where they challenge it out of your tissue because it's in your tissue. That would be acutely, if the blood test was positive, meaning something you're getting exposed every day, but I think you have chronic mercury poisoning. So I did that test, and sure enough, it showed up. So I asked the next question, where do you think I got it from? And he said, did you have any dental work done around this time? And I said, I think I did because I had this gold crown put in and I still had 6 fillings in. Well, what I learned is what most people learn later at some point, that those fillings, those silver fillings, have 50% mercury, and it leaches. And when you put gold in the mouth or a different metal, you have something that occurs called galvanism, and it makes it's like an electric effect, like a battery occurs. So you have two different metals and an acid, and it causes the mercury to flow out even faster. Anyways, bottom line was, it was going in my brain. In particular, what studies show, the hypothalamus pituitary, which controls the hormone system. So hormonally, I became a mess. But the detox that I learned, because I realized not only did I have to get the rest of these out correctly, more importantly, I knew I had to get it out of my brain and the cells. So that's what I teach. So it has been from pain to purpose. And so I'm honored to be here to teach these folks.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah. And so I think your wife has a quick story too. While we're talking about stories, you want to tell us about her experience?
Yeah, ironically enough, there's 7 people in that picture. Now, that's an old picture. These kids are 20 years old now. But, it's an amazing story, and I don't want to take the whole show up. But my wife ended up going in the same direction her mom, who ended up dying of cancer. She had breast cancer first, went traditional, never got upstream to the real problem. But no doubt, I told her if you didn't get to the real problem, she'd end up with another cancer. Doctors, of course, denied that, but she ended up with uterine cancer, died 2 years later. My wife was really hormonally going down that same path as she entered into menopause, perimenopause. And, we ended up doing a 24-hour hormone test on her. And we realized her methylation, which methylation is part of detox, part of cellular detox. It gets rid of toxic estrogens and estrogen metabolites. So when it gets depleted, which toxins or stressors of any type, emotional, physical, or chemical, can deplete that. Hers was depleted, just like her mother's. And toxic estrogen was building up, just like her mother's. And anyways, bottom line was, we tried to address the methylation for a long time, and it wasn't going up. We ended up testing her for lead off the chart. So just like her mom, matter of fact, she inherited her mother's lead. The number one source of lead is actually moms. There's a couple studies, the duress study, that shows, ladies, the number of fillings you have in your mouth is proportional to how much mercury we find in the baby's brain on autopsy. Wow. Lead, the amount of lead in your bones, during pregnancy, it's normal to lose bone, but out comes the lead, where most of the lead is stored in the bone. So you lose the bone, out comes the lead in utero. So we start life. My wife got her exposure, mostly from her mom. She was heading down the same direction. Now, these kids here, these are my 3 biological, that little one, these 2. These 2 we adopted. I'll explain that in a second. But anyways, bottom line is this. They inherited her lead, and they ended up with major gastro issues, etc. So, boom, generational. These 2 we adopted. They had a tragedy at age 7, shortly after this picture was taken, or before this picture was taken. Dylan was vaccine damaged, and he was on the autism spectrum. He's normal today. You wouldn't know it. So he had major issues. Cellular detox saved his life, as well as my wife's, as well as mine. So you're hearing all this story. Olivia, his twin sister, was normal at birth, because they typically girls don't end up on the autism spectrum as often as boys, because estrogen has a protective effect. Oh. However, as she became a teenager, she ended up with some hormone issues. She ended up with some just sensory issues, almost like Dylan. She too had to go through cellular detox. So 7 people, cellular detox, from pain to purpose. There it is. You got the whole story.
There you go. And you're alive and well, all of you, to talk about it, which is really, really great.
Yeah.
It sounds like it'd be a good idea if we all had a blood test. Is that right? Or can we do some things before we resort to a blood test, which is an important thing to know, what that information has for us. But before we go to the blood test, are there some things we can do for ourselves to help the detox?
Well, look, yes, and there's my 5 R's is something that I teach. It became a roadmap of how you fix the cell, because real detox has to go to the cellular level. I know we've heard of the 10-day cleanse you can buy at the health food store, colon cleanses, liver cleanses, so many cleanses, because I think most people intuitively understand they don't feel well. They have hormonal challenges because of toxins, but most of those detoxes that I mentioned are downstream from where the real problem is, and that's the cell. This is why your hormones aren't functioning well. This is why your entry into menopause isn't as smooth as it should be. You can't lose weight. It's a cellular issue. So real detox has to get to the cell, hence the word true cellular detox. My 5 R's became a roadmap that I started teaching doctors with of how to fix the cell, but the public caught on to it watching my videos, and they got it. So, going through that, I think that all of you can understand, okay, I can make even some dietary things. And of course, there's some supplements that, that are helpful there as well. But true detox has to occur at the cell. You mentioned the blood test, though, but I don't want to. Blood test it shows very little. When you look at your blood, most people watching this would say, I've done blood tests, and it's fine. Even thyroid, you have thyroid condition 20 years before the blood numbers actually go off. So, we're talking about, other tests, like my wife did a 24-hour hormone test that was urine actually to look at those. So, there's other tests that are important, but let's focus on, what they can do, I think, to really things that you wouldn't think of as far as detoxing. So if you look at our number 1, it's removing the sources from our life. I mean, that sounds like the obvious, but look, I wouldn't have got my life back if I didn't get rid of these fillings, right? So, that's a big deal. You have to remove sources from your life. If you live in a moldy home, I can't tell you how many people can't lose weight because they're in a moldy home and they don't know it. I've walked in many people's homes and I smell that musty smell. They don't even smell it anymore. And I go, you have a mold issue. And hormonally, you're heading for a train wreck. Weight loss resistance is a big issue there. These fillings leach mercury every day of the filling. And if I can explain, which I will, and this kind of leads me into my R number 2. So we have to get rid of sources, but R number 2, I actually want to draw this because I think that picture is worth a zillion words.
Yeah.
So I'm going to draw it. I'm going to make y'all go to school today a little bit, right? This is what I do. Okay, so I'm going to draw a cell, okay? You can see that, right?
Yep.
Our number 2 is regenerating the cell membrane. Fats play a critical role, and I want to tell your viewers on what fats are actually surprisingly very important for detoxing and healing the cell. This cell is made up of a lipid bilayer. That means 2 layers of fat, simple as that. But here's the important part. On this fatty membrane are these hormone receptors. So let's use thyroid hormone as an example, okay?
Yep.
Because it has a lot to do with your energy, how your brain works, and also how you lose weight, right? So that's a great one to use. Thyroid hormone has to attach to one of these receptors. And then it gets its message in the cell into the DNA, and then all the magic happens. You can think clear, you lose weight, you burn energy, fat for energy, all that great stuff. But toxins attach to this cell membrane, and they drive inflammation. Now, that thyroid hormone, despite your blood work looking normal, can't get its message in the cell. You see? So you go, my blood work's normal. Yeah, because your brain thinks normal levels of T3. The problem is the inflamed cell membrane is blocking the message. So therefore, it doesn't matter. Here's another problem. T4, typically the medication that they give women, right? Men as well. Menopause is your audience. So speaking mostly to them, but T4 has to convert to the active hormone T3. My pen is going, so I'm going to use this pencil. So T3 is the active hormone. Guess what? That has to happen in the liver mostly, in that conversion. So toxic liver prevents that conversion. See, so now you're not converting. They're giving you the medication, which makes your blood work look better. And they go, you should feel better. And you're going, I'm not. Because they're giving you this, makes the blood work look better, but you're not converting it to the active form. So there lies a toxic issue. The cell membrane lies a toxic issue. You see the problem? So the bottom line is this. The cell membrane is very important that we fix this. Fats play a critical role. Now, most of us have heard about fish oil being important. And I agree, it is. DHA is important. However, just taking fish oil oftentimes can make you worse, I believe, in eating fish. So I'm a big fan of sardines, but in wild caught fish. However, here's some fats that you can increase, put in your diet that actually help you as well. Cholesterol and saturated fat. Now, most of you viewers are saying, now, wait a minute, I heard those are bad. Well, guess what? These little receptors on the cell, if we blew one of these up with an electronic microscope, one of these little guys right here that attach to the hormones, there's one of them there. They ride on something called a lipid raft. That means a raft made of fat. So every one of these receptors are on this fat raft. Guess what it's mostly made up of? Saturated fat and cholesterol. As a matter of fact, saturated fat and cholesterol stabilize that membrane. So a lot of people are avoiding fats because of the low fat craze, and they'll especially avoid saturated fat. Grass-fed meats, fantastic to get good saturated fats and cholesterol. Cage-free eggs, good saturated fats and cholesterol. So, these are fats that are important as well. I'm a believer in DHA and eating good fish. So all of those, olive oils, all of those fats make up a really healthy membrane and can help that lipid raft there. So, all right, that's our number 2. Our number 3, and I'll just quickly go through it. I want to answer more questions, but you have to raise cell energy. That's real detox. And doing that, a lot of dietary things that we do play a considerable role in our number 3, and that's restoring cell energy. You can't detox without enough energy. And R4 is reducing inflammation. Again, inflammation, we've heard, causes all these conditions from cancer to diabetes, thyroid. Inflammation's the link. Inflammation of the cell is really what we're talking about. Not just this outer membrane inflaming because toxins attach to it, but even where you make energy in the mitochondria. That's where you make all of your energy. That's how you think clear and feel normal and lose weight. This membrane inflames, so reducing inflammation. The diet, again, critical. Our number 5 is reestablishing methylation. Remember, that's what I said was depleted in my wife and why she couldn't get rid of toxic hormones. Toxins deplete methylation. So reestablishing methylation in the cell is a big one. And those are things like, B12 is a part of that. Folate is a big part of that. Maybe some of your viewers heard of this SNP, this genetic thing called methyl tetrahydrofolate, where they can't convert folate into a methyl group. Some people genetically don't do that as well, but that's another subject. But the bottom line is those 5 R's are what we doctors use as a roadmap to fix the cell and get the cell detoxing. And when that happens, now hormonally, you're functioning. That's why you can't think. That's why you feel abnormal despite dietary changes. You don't feel well. You can't lose weight. You have to fix the cell to get well. And more specifically, you have to detox the cell to get well. So there you go. There's a quick overview.
Okay, so how do we do some of these things for ourselves, Dr. Dan?
Okay, so, we do, most people, like I said, they're detoxing downstream. There's some things that we use, a product called CytoDetox that is a real binder that moves toxins from the cell all the way out of the body without letting go. Using real binders is key. Okay, so there's 3 things that I say make up real detox. True detox, real detox. Number 1 is doing these things that I just talked about at the cell, right? That 5 R's of upregulating cell function. If you don't do that, it's not real detox. Number 2, we have to activate downstream pathways. So if I drew a liver down here and a gut, those are your intestines, believe it or not. I'm that good at drawing. So here's your gut, and that's your liver. When we move the toxins from the cell, they have to go to the liver, and they have to get their way through the gut. So real detox does pay attention to those downstream pathways. We'll talk about some dietary things. And then lastly, the third thing that makes up real detox is using true binders and, to make sure that all of these toxins go out. So there's a product that we created called Bind, and we're not selling products, but I'm just telling you that you can't not bind things in the gut. Otherwise, you auto-intoxicate. So we have a product that sits in the gut that when we bring the toxins from the cell to the liver to the gut, it binds it here so you don't reabsorb it. Because what happens is this: toxins make their way to the liver. There it binds up with something called bile. When you digest fat, you release the bile into the gut, okay? The problem is this: your body is designed to reabsorb that bile back to the liver so it doesn't have to remake it. So when it does that, it brings the toxins back to the liver. So what we do is we put something in the gut to bind it so it makes sure it goes out of the body and not reabsorbed. That's using a true binder. Then we also use a true binder from the cell to here so it doesn't get lost in circulation. So anyways, you know, I teach that. But let's talk about a few dietary things that can reduce inflammation, upregulate that cell energy, and help methylation, because those were like 4 of those 5 R's, right? Your viewers probably heard of some of these things. I'm going to kind of let you ask me some questions because you know your viewers better than I do. Intermittent fasting, ketosis, those are dietary strategies that I think are crucial for down-regulating that cellular inflammation. I think they're almost biohacks into the cell so the cell can actually, you know, start the detoxification on its own. So do you think your viewers know what those are, and we can kind of be...
I'm sure there are some who do and some who don't. And I personally do know about intermittent fasting because I do employ it for myself because I've seen such great results with it. And ketosis as well has been a wonderful benefit for myself and my clients. And it seems that combining those two things, and I'll ask Dr. Dan to explain more, but combining those two things I just feel are very powerful, possibly beyond anything else other than getting a really good night's sleep, for one thing. But yeah, why don't you explain what intermittent fasting and ketosis are?
Yeah, well, let's start with ketosis because your cells can only use 2 things for energy: sugar and fat, okay? Healthy people have the ability, very hormonally healthy people have the ability to use sugar if necessary, glucose, or fat when they're not eating. When most Americans, unfortunately, don't have that ability, they're really stuck as sugar burners. Let me give you some symptoms. If you're not eating, you get irritable, okay? Pretty much stuck as a sugar burner. Have trouble losing weight because when you're not eating, you'll burn muscle and actually get a lower metabolism. That's not normal. You get dizzy. You have food cravings. You say, I'm going to eat good. And then all of a sudden you have to eat the bread. Okay, those are people who are stuck as sugar burners. Now, people who have the ability to burn fat as an energy source when they're not eating, they don't get hungry. And sometimes we go, oh, I didn't even eat. So not typical American, is it? Those people, no doubt, don't get irritable. They have sustained energy and they stay lean very easily. So ketosis is a method of lowering carbohydrates. Typically, you have to go below 50 grams on average a day. And it's forcing your cells to burn fat as an energy source, okay, because you lower your carbohydrate intake. So that's what ketosis is. Ketone, so when you're forcing the cell to burn energy, you're making something called a ketone that your brain uses. So because your brain can only use sugar or these ketones, it can't use fat like most of your other cells. So ketosis is becoming fat adapted, forcing the cells to burn fat as an energy source, not glucose. And then you make these things called ketones that your brain loves. And by the way, we know now scientifically that they turn off bad genes. They turn on good genes. Ketones are very healing for the brain, the cells. They downregulate cellular inflammation. And by the way, here's why this is really important. When we put someone in a ketotic state, ketosis, we're making their cells burn fat or ketones. Think about on your stove, natural gas. You don't need a chimney. It burns so clean. You don't see smoke, right? That's the way fat and ketones burn. Now think of wood. You need a chimney. That's the way glucose burns. So we are biohacking the cell to use a cleaner burning source of energy, thereby down-regulating the cellular inflammation, thereby making these receptors more sensitive to the hormones. See, it's not today. It's very in vogue, especially in menopausal women, to give hormones. I like to give this analogy. It's like shouting at our kids. Those of you who have kids can understand this. When we shout louder at them, or when we shout at our kids, period, in the beginning it works, just like taking hormones, right? It's like, okay, then I feel a little better. And then it starts working less and less. And then it's like shouting at the kids. The more we shout at them, the less they hear us. So that's giving hormones. So we want to not shout at ourselves by giving more hormones. It doesn't work long term. We want to get the cells hearing the hormones better. So ketosis is a strategy to downregulate inflammation, and we know that it upregulates the cell sensitivity to the hormones. See, it's a biohack. It's a trick. It works. Now, with that said, some of you, it takes about 2 to 4 weeks to fat adapt or keto adapt. So you're going to feel horrible the first week because you're used to burning glucose. So I'm just going to tell you that now. And then you break through. Okay, and typically you break through because your brain turns on as the first thing. It's like all of a sudden you break through brain fog, and then you have a lasting energy. Some of you aren't going to break through. And how you know you're in ketosis, the best way, you buy a $25 ketone meter on Amazon, and you do the stick, and when you're above 0.5 on the ketones, you're in ketosis. Do it first thing in the morning. Simple. But many of you are going to say, I've been doing it for 2 months. Not only have I not lost weight, I'm not even in ketosis. Okay, that's typically a toxic issue. To go full circle, that's why cellular detox, because people who are very neurotoxic have trouble even fat adapting. So, and I think we're offering, my team anyway, not me, but there's a neurotoxic test you can take that I think you're going to provide a link for them, because there's certain symptoms that we as practitioners can look at to know if someone's even beyond just toxic, but neurotoxic. And that's really the ones that struggle to be fat adapted, even in a state forcing ketosis. So there you go. That's ketosis. Any questions there before I move on to intermittent fasting? This is a lot. We're putting a lot on them here.
No question, but I'll just make this quick comment that I noticed that since I've been including a lot of the healthy fats in my diet, my brain is definitely working really, really well. And I don't even have fear of Alzheimer's. I just don't have the fear of it, which is a healthy place to be mentally and in my heart too. So, but if you want to tell us more about ketosis and intermittent fasting, that'd be great, because these are big things that we can do for ourselves.
Big things. I move in and out of ketosis on purpose. So like many ancient cultures, I'm always in ketosis in the winter. And then I move out purposely during the summer, eating healthier, higher carbohydrates, not very high, but maybe 100 grams a day as opposed to under 50 when I'm in ketosis. But you said about the fat. When you're moving into ketosis, eating these good saturated fats and even these short chain fatty acids, coconut oil can be beneficial. The good cholesterols can be, people have learned because the old non-fat days, the low fat craze that was, I don't know, was it 80s, 90s? I don't know when it was, but, and it's moved its way out, but some people still buy into it. But we need to eat these fats. Our brain needs them. We're looking at, by 2050, 1/3 of people over the age of 65, being diagnosed with Alzheimer's. That's a scary number. We know fat prevents this. Ketosis is massive. This is, look, the turn of the century, in the early 1900s, they used ketosis not just for epilepsy, but they used it for these brain conditions. It really is a preventer of all neurodegenerative diseases. Every culture, every healthy culture on this planet was forced into times of ketosis and times of fasting, which we're talking about next. We just don't do it anymore. So let's talk about intermittent fasting, what it is, because this is probably the thing that I'm in my 50s now that really has transformed me and literally added healthy years to my life, and more than anything, and is how I'm able to stay very lean in my 50s. Matter of fact, I'm leaner now in my 50s than probably I ever have been in my life. So just because you get older does not mean that, you have to not be as lean. I would argue quite the opposite. But intermittent fasting is one of those strategies. And I think that for most of you, being in ketosis makes this much easier. Now, I can not be in ketosis and intermittent fast, but for most of you, I would go into ketosis first, or doing them simultaneously. So what is it? I'll make it as simple as I can. I eat in a small window from maybe 4 hours to 6 hours in my day. So my first meal, I haven't eaten today. It's 3 o'clock my time. I don't know what it is time where you are, but 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I haven't eaten one bite of food yet. I had some warm tea. That was pretty much it. So I will eat soon. And I'll eat a smaller meal, probably some sardines and maybe some fibers or something that I like. I make this fiber bowl. But anyways, and then I'll eat a big dinner probably around 6 o'clock. Okay, that's it. That's intermittent fasting. So I went 20 hours today without eating from yesterday, right? From dinner last night, I still haven't eaten. So that's 20 hours. That's called intermittent fasting daily. Now, let me tell you why it works. Number one, it makes you very fat adapted. So it forces your cells to burn fat as energy. I explained that. So when I'm not eating, I'm burning my fat stores. Okay. Yeah. And that's really, important. And ask me about 6 meals a day or 5 meals a day, because many of your viewers, I'm sure, have misconceptions there. So I'm forcing my body to use its, like I always say, I'm eating right now. I'm just eating my stored fat, right? That's what I'm eating. So if I measured my ketones right now as a byproduct of breaking fat down, they would be elevated. But anyway, so also studies show 2 amazing things happen. Number one is your body, it's called autophagy. It's eating the bad cells. I'm losing the weak cells, the bad cells. Really? And your body gets rid of them. In my mitochondria, where you produce energy, and my other cells get stronger. They get more fat adapted. So losing bad cells, gaining stronger cells. That's huge. And I do that every day. The other thing that happens is you get a massive growth hormone rise. So I'm optimizing my hormones in this fasting state. And again, it's not about taking more hormones. One of the big changes is at the cell. Your cell becomes more sensitive to the hormones in a fasting state. So, this is why it works. This is how you stay lean. This is how you become fat adapted, and takes, it literally adds years on your life and healthy years. So it's hormone optimization, and you put ketosis and intermittent fasting together, it's magic. However, caution, many of you are neurotoxic and going, I just can't do this. I'm hungry all the time. This is, all these bad things happen. So the detox is a part of this as well.
Right. And I just want to say, because I'm so happy that I've found intermittent fasting and ketosis, because, I'm several years older than Dr. Pompa, who is in his 50s, as he said. And my thighs are getting smaller. I mean, I'm just so happy to report that. I have to share that. And I do believe it's from, I get a fair amount of exercise, but it's just walking a mile or a half a mile today, and or a mile or a half a mile a day, not jogging anymore, taking it a little slower. And I'm as the months go by, I'm getting happier and happier with my body, as well as some of my clients. So what Dr. Dan is telling us really works, and for our health and longevity as well. So I do want to ask you, as you mentioned, we should talk about eating 5 to 6 meals a day.
Yeah, because
that's
flies.
An old trend, an old fad, I should say.
Yeah, exactly. It flies in contrary to, I have something that I called my 180-degree solution. That means you simply watch the media, watch TV, read the articles in newspapers, magazines. That's my dog. Someone's knocking on my door. And do the opposite, 180 degrees opposite. And somehow you find the truth every time. So we're saying high fat. The media is saying low fat. They're saying eat 5, 6 meals a day to keep your metabolism up. And I'm saying baloney. That works short term, but you never give your body a time to utilize its fat for energy.
That doesn't make that much rational sense.
Exactly. No culture on the planet has ever done that. It's not healthy. Listen, every time, I always say, if you want to age faster than anyone in your neighborhood, you know, in your Bible group, whatever it is, just eat more. That's it. You eat more. You know, no, it's eat less, live longer. You know, but I always say, don't eat less often, because that's what every ancient culture does. Every time you eat, you spike glucose and insulin, which means you just aged. So you want to eat less often.
Yes.
Give your chance. You want glucose and insulin to be perfect. Let your body feed from its own fat.
Right, exactly. That makes so much sense. Let's go back a second to intermittent fasting, because I'm sure I'm sure there's a bunch of women out there who are saying, I'm not going to not eat for 20 hours a day. So how can we modify that, Dr. Dan?
Here's where you start. Great question. Here's where you start, folks. As simple as this. What time do you get up in the morning? Let's say it's 8 o'clock is your first meal. Let's say 6 o'clock is your last meal. Okay, so instead of eating at 6, eat at 5. And instead of eating at 8, eat at 9. So I pushed breakfast back, or I pushed it forward, I should say, and I pushed dinner back an hour. So now you're fasting 2 more hours. Studies show even just a 15-hour fast, you get the growth hormone change, the hormone optimization, your cells become more sensitive to your hormones, and it downregulates inflammation, and you get the growth hormone spike. So if you can just, you know, add an hour before you eat breakfast and take an hour off, there you go. Oh, and then once you go, okay, I'm okay with that now, go to 10 o'clock, go to 11 o'clock. So just start by pushing it out. And then you can still eat 3 meals in that window, but after a while, you'll go, I'll just eat 2 meals. You know, and then you just skip breakfast and eat your first meal at noon. So, I mean, it's not hard to do, but start just by bumping the window.
It's not hard to do. And I think one of the factors that makes it easier in terms of satisfaction from food is the amount of olive oil and almond oil, and I mean avocado oil and avocados and those fatty foods, and the meats that I eat are so satisfying and so yummy that it really does seem to help curb the carb cravings for myself and clients as well. So I really highly recommend it. And viewers, you can look around on the internet and find, you know, or certainly review this the next day, but you can find out how to do intermittent fasting and get your body into ketosis, which is not a trend. It's not a fad. This is something that is fundamentally sound from, you know, recent research in the last just handful of years, right, Dr. Pompa? It hasn't been around that long, and our awareness of it, and something that you really should at least entertain employing, either intermittent fasting or getting your body into a ketosis state. All right, well, this has been so great, Dr. Dan. Why don't you tell us about your free gift that I know about, and it's going to be very empowering for all of us. I can't wait to use it myself.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is a way to see if you're neurotoxic. I mean, you know, over the years, we can dial in certain symptoms that people have with a certain history, and just answering some of those questions, you get this free neurotoxicity quiz, if you will, that walks you through that. Because a lot of people, and you'll point them in the right direction, but a lot of people that, again, are going to say, gosh, I'm not fat adapting. I'm not able to get into ketosis. I'm struggling intermittent fasting. I'm still not losing weight. This is a toxic issue. You know, weight loss resistance is being driven by neurotoxins. So yeah, I mean, take the quiz, and I know that'll point you in the right direction. I've done thousands of videos on these issues, on these topics, and I've educated beyond doctors, you know, into the public. So this is my passion. So pain to purpose.
Yes, yes. Thank goodness for that pain. We might not be here talking about this empowering information. And so can we find some of your videos on YouTube?
Yeah, no doubt. If you just go to DR, like doctor, and then my last name, POMPA.com. So drpompa.com, thousands of videos on YouTube on all of these subjects. And my passion is no doubt educating people on these things that most people really don't know about.
Right, exactly. So I think we busted some myths here today, Dr. Dan, and I sure appreciate your spending your hour or so with us. And we're going to wrap it up for now, viewers. And Dr. Dan, we'll see you around the internet. All right?
Got it.
Thank you. Bye.